Picture this. You're a young courtier in the year 1483, standing in the shadowed alcoves of Windsor Castle as King Richard III approaches his chambers. The torchlight flickers against stone walls that have witnessed centuries of royal excess, and tonight you're about to discover why the bedroom of a medieval monarch was the most dangerous place in the entire kingdom. Your heart pounds as you realize that what happens behind these heavy oak doors will determine not just the fate of queens and concubines, but the very survival of bloodlines that have ruled for generations. The air is thick with the scent of lavender and something far more sinister, the metallic tang of fear that clings to every surface in this palace of absolute power. Before diving into these forgotten stories of royal depravity and political manipulation, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. I find it incredible that we're exploring these ancient stories together, from different parts of the world, connected across time and space by our shared curiosity about the past. Throughout history, the bedchambers of kings have been theatres of power where the most intimate moments became weapons of political control. These weren't love stories or romantic encounters. These were calculated campaigns of dominance where royal bloodlines were forged through terror, manipulation, and rules so savage that they would make modern dictators seem merciful by comparison. The bedroom rules of history's worst kings weren't just about pleasure or procreation. They were about survival in a world where the wrong word whispered between silk sheets could trigger wars that would consume entire nations. The concept of royal bedroom etiquette emerged from a fundamental truth that most people never consider. When you possess absolute power over millions of lives, every personal interaction becomes a matter of state security. The kings we're about to explore understood this principle with crystal clarity, and they crafted bedroom rules that transformed intimate encounters into sophisticated instruments of psychological warfare. These monarchs didn't just sleep with people, they conquered them, body and soul, using techniques that combined ancient wisdom about human nature with innovation so cruel that they've been deliberately erased from most history books. King Henry VIII of England revolutionized the art of bedroom intimidation in ways that extended far beyond his famous habit of executing wives. His private chambers at Hampton Court Palace were designed as psychological torture devices, equipped with hidden passages that allowed him to appear and disappear without warning. Courtiers never knew when the king might emerge from behind a tapestry to catch them in compromising positions or private conversations. This architectural paranoia created an atmosphere where even his closest advisors lived in constant terror of being observed during their most vulnerable moments. Henry's bedroom rules included a practice he called the midnight interrogation. Any woman who shared his bed, whether wife, mistress, or reluctant courtier, would be subjected to hours of questioning about the loyalty of their family members, their personal religious beliefs, and any conversations they might have overheard. These weren't casual pillow talk conversations. They were systematic intelligence-gathering operations conducted while his partners were naked, exhausted, and psychologically defenseless. The information gathered during these sessions would later be used to destroy entire noble families who had unknowingly revealed their secrets through their daughters or wives. The king maintained detailed written records of every intimate encounter, noting not just physical details, but emotional reactions, verbal responses, and any signs of disloyalty or resistance. These documents, preserved in the Tower of London archives until they were mysteriously destroyed in the 18th century, reportedly contained enough blackmail material to control virtually every important family in England. Henry understood that information gathered in moments of physical vulnerability was the most reliable intelligence available, and he exploited this principle with ruthless efficiency. But Henry's psychological manipulation extended beyond mere information gathering. He established a rotation system for his intimate companions that was designed to create maximum anxiety and competition among the women of his court. No woman ever knew when she might be summoned to the royal chambers, and the summons came with implicit threats about what would happen to their families if they proved unsatisfactory. This system kept hundreds of noble women in a constant state of preparation and terror, never knowing if tonight would be the night their family's fortune depended on their performance in the king's bed. Ivan the Terrible of Russia took these concepts to even more extreme levels during his reign from 1547 to 1584. His bedroom at the Kremlin was equipped with torture devices that he would display prominently to anyone who entered his private chambers. Visitors would be forced to walk past implements of execution while discussing matters of state or personal intimacy. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. People entering Ivan's bedroom knew that pleasure and pain, life and death, were separated by nothing more than the Tsar's momentary whim. Ivan's most notorious bedroom rule was his practice of conducting executions immediately after intimate encounters. He would make love to a woman, then order the death of someone she cared about while she was still naked and emotionally vulnerable. This wasn't random cruelty. It was a calculated method of demonstrating that no human connection was beyond his power to destroy. The women who survived these experiences became completely psychologically dependent on the Tsar, unable to form emotional attachments to anyone else for fear of causing their deaths. The Russian Tsar also pioneered the use of false intimacy as a weapon of statecraft. He would spend hours in apparently tender conversation with foreign ambassadors, court officials, or potential rivals, encouraging them to share their deepest fears and ambitions. These conversations took place in his private chambers, often while participants were in various states of undress, creating an atmosphere of false friendship and mutual vulnerability. The information gathered during these sessions would then be used to manipulate or destroy his guests within of their intimate days' conversations. King Louis XI of France developed perhaps the most sophisticated system of bedroom espionage in European history. His chambers at the Château de Plessis-les-Tours were equipped with acoustic devices that allowed him to eavesdrop on conversations taking place in adjacent rooms. But more importantly, he trained a network of courtiers and servants to engage in intimate relationships with his political enemies and report back everything they learned. This system turned the entire French court into a web of sexual espionage where no relationship was genuine and every intimate moment was potentially being recorded for political purposes. Louis understood that people revealed their true intentions most clearly during moments of physical passion, and he exploited this insight to maintain control over a kingdom that was constantly on the verge of civil war. His bedroom rules required that any woman who shared his bed must also seduce at least 3 of his political rivals within the following month, gathering intelligence that would be compiled into detailed reports about the loyalty and intentions of every major noble family in France. These intelligence reports formed the foundation of what historians now call the Plessis Papers, a collection of intimate surveillance documents that Louis used to orchestrate political marriages, arrange strategic assassinations, and manipulate succession disputes across Europe. The king's bedroom had become the nerve center of a continental spy network that operated through seduction and sexual blackmail on an unprecedented scale. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of Louis's system was his recruitment process for female agents. Young women from noble families would be brought to court under the pretense of serving as ladies in waiting, only to discover that their true role was to become trained seductresses in service to the crown. These women, some as young as 14, would undergo months of instruction in techniques of psychological manipulation, sexual control, and information extraction. They learned to read micro-expressions, to identify moments of emotional vulnerability, and to exploit physical intimacy as a weapon of statecraft. The training took place in specially designed chambers beneath the chateau, where veteran agents would demonstrate techniques on captured prisoners or condemned criminals. These practice sessions were recorded through written accounts that reveal a level of systematic cruelty that defies comprehension. Women who proved particularly skilled at extracting information through intimate manipulation would be rewarded with titles and wealth. Those who failed or showed signs of developing genuine emotional attachments to their targets would simply disappear, their names erased from court records as if they had never existed. The psychological toll of this system extended far beyond its immediate victims. The constant atmosphere of sexual suspicion and manipulation created a court culture where genuine human connection became virtually impossible. Marriages were arranged not for love or political alliance, but for maximum intelligence-gathering potential. Children grew up knowing that their parents' relationship was likely built on espionage and deception. The very concept of trust between human beings was systematically destroyed in service to royal power. Vlad the Impaler of Wallachia brought an entirely different approach to bedroom intimidation that relied on pure physical terror rather than psychological manipulation. His chambers in Târgoviște were decorated with the preserved remains of his victims, creating an environment where intimate encounters took place literally surrounded by death. Partners were forced to make love while surrounded by the skulls of people who had displeased the prince, creating associations between physical pleasure and mortal terror that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. Vlad's bedroom rules included a practice he called the loyalty test, where anyone who shared his bed would be presented with a living prisoner and ordered to personally execute them as proof of their devotion. Those who refused would be impaled alongside the original prisoner. Those who complied became psychologically bound to the prince through shared guilt and trauma. This system created an inner circle of accomplices who were too compromised to ever betray him, even as they lived in constant terror of becoming his next victims. The Wallachian prince also maintained a collection of exotic torture devices in his private chambers, not for actual use during intimate encounters, but as constant reminders of what awaited anyone who might consider betrayal. Women would be required to help him maintain and polish these instruments while discussing their day or goss sharing it from the court. This normalization of violence in intimate settings created psychological conditioning that made resistance or independent thought virtually impossible. Emperor Caligula of Rome elevated bedroom savagery to levels that shocked even contemporary observers who were accustomed to imperial excess. His private chambers in the Palatine Palace were designed as amphitheaters, where intimate encounters became public spectacles for his entertainment. Guests would be forced to perform sexual acts, while audiences of senators and foreign dignitaries watched from specially constructed viewing areas. The humiliation was complete and deliberate, designed to break the will of anyone who might pose a political threat to his regime. Caligula's bedroom rules included mandatory participation in what he called divine ceremonies, where sexual acts were performed as religious rituals honoring his supposed godhood. Participants were required to worship him physically while proclaiming his divine nature, creating a fusion of religious devotion and sexual submission that reinforced his political authority through spiritual manipulation. Those who showed insufficient enthusiasm during these ceremonies would find themselves facing charges of blasphemy, which carried automatic death sentences. The emperor's most notorious innovation was his practice of using intimate encounters as public trials where accusations of treason would be made during moments of physical vulnerability. Senators and their wives would be summoned for what they believed were private audiences, only to discover that their loyalty was being tested through sexual performance, while hidden observers took notes on their responses. These bedroom interrogations became the basis for political Gs that decimated the Roman aristocracy and created an atmosphere of terror that persisted long after Caligula's assassination. The legacy of these savage bedroom rules extended far beyond the individual reigns of these monarchs. They established precedents for the use of intimate surveillance and sexual manipulation as tools of political control that would influence royal courts across Europe for centuries. The techniques developed by these kings became standardized practices that were taught to successive generations of rulers, creating institutional systems of bedroom espionage that operated with bureaucratic efficiency and devastating effectiveness. As we step back from the shadowed corridors of these royal chambers, the torchlight finally dims on some of history's most disturbing chapters. The savage bedroom rules we've explored tonight weren't mere footnotes in dusty history books. They were systematic programs of psychological warfare that transformed the most intimate moments of human experience into weapons of absolute control. From Henry's midnight interrogations to Ivan's torture chambers, from Louis's spy networks to Caligula's public spectacles, these monarchs understood a fundamental truth that modern dictators still employ today. Control the bedroom, and you control the soul. The architectural remains of these palaces still stand across Europe, their stone walls having absorbed centuries of whispered secrets and muffled screams. Tourists walk through Hampton Court and the Kremlin, admiring the artwork and grandeur, never knowing that they're treading through spaces where human dignity was systematically destroyed in service to royal power. The hidden passages and acoustic devices remain silent witnesses to innovations in cruelty that thankfully died with their creators. Perhaps most chilling is the realization that these weren't the products of madness or random violence. They were calculated systems developed by intelligent, educated rulers who understood human psychology with terrifying clarity. Their bedroom rules worked precisely because they exploited our most basic needs for intimacy, trust, and emotional connection. Transforming these vulnerabilities into instruments of political domination that could break entire bloodlines with surgical precision. The next time you visit a medieval castle or royal palace, remember that behind those magnificent tapestries and golden fixtures lie stories of systematic terror that make our modern understanding of privacy and consent seem like precious luxuries that previous generations couldn't even imagine.